Very excited for today's luncheon. As many of you may know, unfortunately, yesterday, a great champion of democracy in our local community passed away, Gary Carnes. Gary was an amazing human being. He was a devoted community activist and labor leader. Many of you may have worked with him. He worked tirelessly to promote civic engagement and improve the quality of life for others. And as former Senator Bill Monning said about him, in the words of the late, great Honorable John Lewis, Gary was a master of creating good trouble. And Gary will be missed tremendously, and our hearts are with his partner Heidi and all of his family. Indeed, he will be sorely, sorely missed within our community. So if we can just take a minute, a moment of silence. Sorry for my apologies here. Okay, we're check issues. So if we can just take a moment of silence and recognize Gary, that would be appreciated. We're having some tech issues, so there's no photographs of him, but he lives mostly in our hearts. May that carry through with us. Okay, thank you. And also, we'll keep the community updated as we know what kind of services and how the family would like to be recognizing him and what will continue within our community. And on that note, though, I can only imagine how he would be feeling with today's state. Anyhow, we want to take a moment, though, and welcome everyone here, our members and our non-members. I see a number of new faces, so we're very happy to have you here with us. We'd also like to take a moment to honor our elected officials. I have, is California Coastal Commissioner Annie Malhoff. Is she here? I don't see her, but she's going to be here. Okay. And then we have Vice President of North Monterey County Fire Protection District Board of Directors, Jacqueline Simon. And I also, we were supposed to have our Monterey Peninsula Water Management District folks, but I don't see, is George here? Yes, George is here. Hello, George. And I do see Karen Paul also in the back. Hi, Karen. Thank you. And we have Seaside City Council member Dave Pacheco. Thank you. And, did I miss anybody? Oh, and of course, our key speaker, Monterey Peninsula College Board of Trustees President? Chair, our key speaker, or one of our key speakers, Rosalind Green. So thank you. We have that in your introduction. I just, yeah. All right. So we'd like to make some announcements. First, we want to thank everyone who attended, donated, or sponsored our 2023 sustainability event. We actually raised over $33,000, which is really incredible considering it was a non-presidential election year. So it's a very clear statement about the values and priorities that we want to see within our government and within our leadership. So really, thank you. Today's discussions will be addressing two very significant local issues which tie into the DWMC platforms of equity and family policy. Equity encompasses equal pay, equal rights, and equal opportunity. And it includes, of course, equal treatment, but that treatment can be different, basically what is considered equivalent in terms of rights, benefits, obligations, and opportunity. I'm sorry, okay. So when we talk about equity and family values, we on the DWMC are committing and to support and achieving a society in which there are equal opportunities and systems in place so that women of all ages and their family can rise from poverty, violence, and abuse lack of health care, and job discrimination. But of course, to achieve this requires great courage. It requires us to look within ourselves and within our community in order to transcend the us versus them mentality and create policies and practices which support all people having safe housing, adequate child and elder care, accessibility to health care and education, and to transportation systems needed to maintain healthy lives. And this is how we begin to build a culture rooted in equity and well-being. So when we hear our speakers today, we invite you to consider the issues being discussed and how do we build our communities, and in doing so to consider how do we foster equitable well-being and what policies are needed to be created or changed to do so. And more importantly, why I hope you're all here, is also how you can get engaged. And so today's nonprofit, we're going to start off with an introduction of them, and then we're going to have a little bit of lunch for a little bit, and then we're going to go to our keynote speakers. But our featured nonprofit today is Community Human Services. And for over 50 years, this local not-for-profit has provided substance abuse treatment and prevention, mental health and homelessness services to those most in need. And they have a focus on women, families, and youth. Next month, a very exciting event occurring. They're going to be opening the Schumann Heart House, which will be the first shelter for homeless women and families with children in Monterey. And so, yeah, super exciting. And so on, is it this coming? No, next Saturday, November 4th, right? This November 4th, they will be having an open house, and you can go to their website to learn more, or our speakers will share that. And also, there's a table at the back where people will give you more information and how you can get involved in that. And with that, I would like to turn this over to Evangelina Ochoa, who is the Senior Program Officer of Homeless Services at Community Homeless Services. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone, and thanks for having us here and for giving us the opportunity to tell you a little bit more about our programs. But I first want to start off with Schumann Heart House. One, we're extremely excited about opening up in about a week and a half, almost 2 weeks. What I do want to give you a little backstory is when we first opened up Casa de Noche Buena Shelter in Seaside, when we opened up the call list, right, the phone screenings, I believe it was about 10 o'clock in the morning when they started to take calls to do phone screening, start putting people on the wait list. Those phones were nonstop. They were ringing nonstop. I remember staff, even till this day, they remember and they have this look on their face like, oh my God, the phones would not stop ringing. We had so many people calling, and it just goes to show the need. And right now on our wait list, we have 212 households on our wait list. 145 of those are families, and 67 of those are single women. We still have so many more families and single women out in the community who haven't even called to get on our wait list. So that just goes to show the need that we have for a new shelter. And when those phones were ringing nonstop, that's when CHS realized we needed another one here on the peninsula. And thankfully we've got it here in Monterey finally. So again, we're going to be able to accommodate, up to 35 guests at Schumann Heart House, pretty much the same as Casa Noche Buena, mirroring everything, the services, the wraparound services, case management, housing navigation, to be able to help our guests transition into stable and permanent housing. And just to give you a little bit of backstory, recently we had a single father with 2 school-age children. He was working 2 jobs here on the peninsula. His children were playing sports, and he had applied to several apartments, continuously working from the time he got to at Casa Noche Buena. And with the help of our housing navigator, they were able to get him an emergency housing voucher through the Public Housing Authority. And 4 months after getting to Casa Noche Buena, he was able to reinstate his driver's license. His children were able to get into counseling, and he got the voucher. And I believe it was 2 months after he got the voucher, he was accepted into permanent housing and was housed at the end of September. the excitement on his face when I first, I've been with Community Human Services since January, and I started taking over for our program officer who's on maternity leave. So the first few months, first few days in August when I was there, you can see he was very down. It was getting close to being there, a couple of extra months, and the look on his face to know when he was accepted into housing, it just pulled on, it was pulling on my heartstrings, and just seeing his face, how excited, how happy he was that he finally was able to get into housing, a single father with 2 kids, trying everything to get into permanent housing. It was just so heartwarming, and that reminded me, this is why I do this job. This is why I've been in this field for about 13 years now. It's because of families like him getting into permanent housing. Another example I'm gonna give you is we had a single female who had been homeless for about 8 years here on the peninsula. Had been working with a variety of organizations, and she was just there was always a barrier that would pop up. One of the barriers was her birth certificate. With the name change, I don't know if you all know, it is extremely hard to get your birth certificate, to get a new birth certificate when you've changed your name. Especially when you're homeless, you've lost all your documentations, all your vitals. So she had been at Casa de Nochebuena, and 4 months into the program, the client was able to receive her emergency housing voucher. After working tirelessly with our case manager, she finally received her birth certificate the day she moved out of Casa de Nochebuena into permanent housing. And again, after 8 years of being homeless. Still to this day, and that was, I want to say, in July. She came back the other day to come and visit, and she was just so excited. She was just full of hugs. All she wanted to do was hug and just thank us for all the hard work that they had done to be able to help her to get her birth certificate. Sometimes we think, oh, it's a birth certificate, it's not a big deal. It's a huge deal. It's a huge deal because we all know you need your California driver's license identification for everything. Now in order to get your real ID, you need a birth certificate. Sometimes when you weren't born in this area and you're born out of county, out of state, it is really difficult. And thankfully we have the staff, we have the case managers to help, and that's what we're going to be able to do at Schumann Heart House. So I just wanted to give you a little snippet of the great success stories that come with the guests that we serve at our shelters. And with that, because I know I had a few minutes and I'm seeing my timer over here that I'm over 5 minutes already. I do want to say, thankfully we do have the Junior League coming on this Saturday from 9 to 12 at Schumann Heart House to be able to help us furnish the rest of the stuff that we have, put up some furniture, make the rest of our beds. They'll be there to help out. On November 4th, on Saturday, from 2 to 4 p.m. is the ribbon cutting and open house for the community to be able to come and join us that day. You can go onto our website to our SVP. That way we can get a head count. We are going to have live music, refreshments, and anything else if I'm missing, Megan. Please let me know. But other than that, I just want to thank everyone for giving us this opportunity, and I hope you enjoy your lunch. I'll pass it back to you, Lisa. Thank you.
To introduce to you Ana Velasquez, Soledad Mayor, and DWMC President, who is going to announce our keynote speakers. Anna, thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone, and thank you for being here again. It's really nice to be able to see a lot of new faces here, and some of the conversations, just having some of the conversations just momentarily with some of you, is we have a lot of work to do. And people are here because it's really an important time for all of us, and especially for us as Democrats and for our democracy. So it's really amazing to be able to be gathered with you all here, and it's to hear the important work that we have before us, but also to be able to learn about the important work that is already being done in our communities. And how do we support those efforts? How do we align other efforts with current efforts that are happening in our community? So with that, it is my honor to be able to introduce the next guest speakers that we're going to have for this afternoon with you. And I will begin with introductions with the Monterey County Black Caucus mission as our guest speakers for today. And their mission is to heal and empower the Black community by providing a safe space for Monterey County residents to unpack and reflect upon current and historical issues by cultivating leadership through resident information, resource, education sessions, and mentorship. The Monterey County Black Caucus also advocates for racial equity and inspiring Black culture through creative arts and honoring our ancestors. In today's discussion, we'll learn more about the Monterey County Black Caucus as the powerful work that they are doing in the community. With this in mind, I am honored to introduce our three next guest speakers. And so I will begin with 17 years of organizing, community relations, and public engagement experience. We have today Deja Robinson, who is a Black Power building organizer for Building Healthy Communities of Monterey County. She's the Administrator Support Coordinator with the Helen Rucker Center for Excellence at CSUMB. She's also a Healing Circle Facilitator for Wellness Wednesday at Seaside High School. We can all use that Wellness Wednesday. She's a digital marketing and graphic designer for Juneteenth Monterey County, and a founding member and community organizer for the Monterey County Black Caucus. So if you can just join me in a big round of applause for our speaker. It's also my honor to introduce Skylar Chubbs, who is an up-and-coming star. She currently serves as a youth organizer for Building Healthy Communities and Monterey County Black Caucus, where she leads the Seaside Rising Youth Leadership Academy. So if you can help me welcome Skylar, please. And last but not least, it's my honor to be introducing Seaside native and also my friend Rosalind Green, who was recognized as a DWMC's 2023 Extraordinary Civic Leader. She has more than 35 years of being a leader, activist, advocate, and organizing to end systemic racism, anti-Blackness, and gender inequities. She founded the Monterey County Black Caucus and co-founded the Monterey County Black and Brown Solidarity Coalition. She serves in many different leadership capacities, which include, but are not limited to, I'm only going to read some of them. She has a whole list. Building Healthy Communities, Director of Regional Black Power, Building and Justice Reinvestment, Chair of the Monterey Peninsula College District Trustee, Vice Chair of the California Community College Black Caucus, Executive Education Chair for the NAACP Monterey County, The Village Project, Inc., Monterey Peninsula Unified School District, and as a board chair for Ladies First, a mentoring program for girls of color. So please help me welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Velasquez, for that introduction. I have to take you on the road with me. So our mission was already given to you all, so we'll just jump right into the who, what, when, where, why, and how on who we are. I'm going to give a little more background and make some connections that may not always be clear. Building Healthy Communities, known as BHC, is or was a 10-year initiative that was started by the California Endowment. And the initiative was placed with Action Council as the fiscal sponsor. So Action Council incubated BHC for the first 10 years. And in that initiative, it was in Salinas, East Salinas to be exact, and the focus there was our farm working community and our undocumented community. But the mission and vision was to conquer or address racial equity. And so in that, BHC realized that they could not only stay in East Salinas, but needed to move the work out, and also identified that there was a key missing group in the conversation and movement, which was Black community. And so they came out to the peninsula where I was born and raised, and to MPUSD, and saw me there and onboarded me with the organization in 2017. And so that's just a connection, because a lot of folks don't really understand like the tier. We're Action Council, we're building healthy communities, and in 2020, our group founded the Monterey County Black Caucus to continue moving work along. And so in the pandemic, when the whole world was sitting still, and we experienced, across the world, the murder of George Floyd and several others, but George Floyd's murder was the one that really took off and was recognized and seen on national TV, because everybody was just sitting at home, sheltering in place. There was a recognition from the California Endowment that there was harm in only identifying and uplifting one group in their efforts to build healthy communities. And so with that, a conversation happened, and I had, a vision of the Black Caucus. And so bringing back to community a team of folks, I'm identified as the founder, but I just had the baby in my belly, but the inception and the birthing was with community, right? And so in 2020 we did mapping of our Black residents, and then in 2021 the Monterey County Black Caucus was announced. So where the idea came from was something what Anna mentioned is my affiliation with the California Community College Black Caucus. And in these meetings, I realized this is something that we need, locally on a local level. And so, with a lot of influence from Dr. Weber, as you see me there with, and Dr. Lori Wilson, who is now the chair of the California Legislative Black Caucus, many others, Chris Holden and folks like that. I got the idea and the blueprint of how to bring something to our community locally, but it wasn't just to have political power, but more to have people power, because that is the alignment with our mission at building healthy communities. It is to cultivate leadership and influence people power. And so just on who we are, and this is just the Black Power Building team that is under the Building Healthy Community umbrella, who kind of does the footwork for the MCBC. Tanisha, who's actually here with us as well, she onboarded as a Thriving Neighborhoods organizer, and what we do in organizing is really like looking at policies and practices and procedures that suppress and oppress marginalized people. And so in these efforts we work closely in our education system and our governments. And so Tanisha was working closely with our Seaside City government. In fact, in 2020, she actually ran for city council. And a huge part of that campaign really like inspired us to make sure that the Monterey County Black Caucus came into fruition and in existence. Because what we found is that there was not a lot of connections, and Black community voices really needed to be, invisibility needed to be lifted and enhanced in order to make the necessary changes that we see need to be made in our communities. I'll pass it over to Keisha.
Thank you, Ms. Ross. And so, again, I'm Deja Robinson, and I started out as a community health worker, which when the pandemic hit, it was just a big necessity that we needed, but particularly for the Black community. And so myself and Skylar, I won't tell their stories, but we started out in the churches where we would give out resources to our community and just give them that opportunity to be able to kind of bounce back from what was hitting us all hard, the unknown. But from there, I was onboarded into BHC. And so I currently serve as the facilitator for Wellness Wednesday at Seaside High, which is an after-school program. And we started in 2021, so this is the third year. And they're my babies, but I won't get into that. But the work there is so necessary because we see that our youth is just being pushed out and forgotten. And so us being in the schools is giving them that hope, that visibility, and just that encouragement that we care. We're not going to throw them away. We understand them, we value them. And that we're just going to fight to do whatever we can to make sure that they get what they need. And that is a part of growth, you know, and it will be helpful to have those more resources and collaborations. Because sometimes when people are in positions, they think that they have that hierarchy and students don't have a voice. But without the students, you don't have a future. So here are some pictures of myself and programming. And this one I'm really proud of, even though it's like just words. But I remember one time we came into class and we were like, when you think about Wellness Wednesday, what comes to mind? And we have been going through a part of kind of like a back and forth battle with district about our value at the school. And so just hearing from the students that they felt like they could be themselves when they walk into the classroom. They felt like it was a family environment. But you could just see some of the words that they used, and that was just very touching to hear. Because even yesterday programming, hearing their words and their just their experiences with their teachers, they were saying that their teachers do not listen to them, they do not know them, they don't understand them, they don't take the time to get to know them. And so that's one of the reasons why our students act out the way they do. And so having Wellness Wednesday in the classroom or at the school gives them that chance to just be themselves because they have people in that room that value them. So that's part of the work that I do. I'm very proud of that. Oops. And then, how do I go back? Okay. All right, and so we also have Pastor Smith. His name is Artist Smith. He came on to BHC as the Black Power Building Organizer for Salinas. And although this is like a very short snippet of his work, it doesn't do any justice, but he is a spiritual leader. And during the protest, he was he was necessary in the protest because he was one of the ones who were leading the prayer vigils. And we know that a lot of times when we're seeing harm within our communities, a lot of the Black community, we just use that faith background as our foundation to come up from, you know, just turmoil. And so he also was connected to help form the Black and Brown Solidarity Coalition. And so he is currently and still the community leader in Black Power Building in Salinas, a core leader for MCBC, and something that we have to mention is that a part of his organizing and his effort, he was one of the reasons to push Vanessa Robinson, who is now the governing board trustee. I see you clapping over there, Wes. But she she's the first Black woman to uphold that title in Salinas Union High School District. And I don't want to have to give the lesson about Salinas Union High School District, but we all know that that comes with a lot of trauma. And then I'll pass it on. Well, check out Pastor Smith's work.
Thank you, Deja. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Skylar. Piggybacking off of what Deja said, I became a community health worker. Rosalind brought me on, and in 2020, we were just focused on getting resources to Seaside residents from the county, but specifically Seaside residents. We went through the churches, and we're just focused on like what their needs. From there, I then transitioned because during the time, what we saw from George Floyd's murder, that there was a real just need for advocacy for the youth. They uprised and they went to the protest that we had, and there was just a real need for them to be able to show their voices. So from there, Seaside Rising came about. Now I'm the youth organizer for Seaside Rising. We're a youth leadership academy. Our focus is getting students involved into civic engagement, introducing to them what civic engagement is, being able to advocate themselves. From that, we started going into the schools and just canvassing, telling the student, going into the classes and asking the students what issues they faced in the community and in education. I went to Seaside High, so there was some familiarity there with the students because I graduated there in 2021. And from there, the students, here's some pictures of us at Seaside Rising, and from there we were able to as a youth with the core team of 10, and now we're 12 deep, but we were able to cultivate the academy, create the curriculum for the Leadership Academy, and it's completely youth-led and based, and we have an 8-week session every summer that we hold once a week for students. And through that, we were able to just grow the students' confidence, leadership, just teaching them to be able how to lead themselves and to lead others so that they know more about how to focus on, just fighting systems that are always oppressing them, whether it be them not being able to afford things or them being able to not come from a 2-parent household, just being able to acknowledge that they do have a voice and that it needs to be heard in Seaside. So from there we had the academy, and we also were able to go into Bayview Academy. So now we teach Seaside Rising as an elective, kind of like a pre-academy to the 7th and 8th graders, kind of getting them to, from when they decide to go to high school, are ready to go into Seaside Rising. They have that safe space and advocacy. So yes, we're just still focusing on all the work that we need to do, all the students and youth that need to be taught that their voices do matter and that they can advocate for themselves and make changes in the community itself and in their education, because at the end of the day, it is their education and their community, and we don't want them to be pushed out. So yes, here's some pictures of us. And we had Councilman Alexis Garcia Arizolo teach one of our classes, so he's in that picture. And that picture is also from our youth summit from 2022, or last year. We're having another youth summit this year, so in December, so be on the lookout for that. Excuse me if my voice went out. Moving on to Robert, I'll go quickly over Robert's work. As Rosalind said before, Robert is now in, Robert is now part of Thriving Neighborhoods, the work that Tanisha did before. So he focuses a lot, he's also our photographer, so he gets all the pictures for our events. So Juneteenth, Black August, anything that we have, Robert's getting our pictures. He's also on the ground with the community, working on the budget, survey, mapping with the students. He's working on a community diversion program just to get youth or just people who have been affected by systems or maybe incarcerated, just another way, a path for them, and community garden nurturing. So Robert is also a founding member of the Monterey County Black Caucus and has recently onboarded at BHC as the Thriving Neighborhoods organizer since Tanisha moved to communications. Thank you. Here is some of the work that Robert's done, some pictures he's taken, some events, just a quick show of all his work. So for our 2020 summary, on May 25th, 2020, George Floyd was murdered, which sparked several protests along the peninsula. It was really worldwide, but specifically on the peninsula, that's where we saw like an uproar and an uprising of Black community. Although we weren't successful in defunding the police, we were successful in getting a $500,000 community grant. And the mapping then began in the Black community. The mapping of Black necessity was created by consultants Roslyn, Robert, and Lavisha Franklin, and the mapping story grew into the BHC Black Power Building team and created the Monterey County Black Caucus. So with us going into the community and seeing where the need was in the community, that's how it birthed Roslyn's vision. Our first Juneteenth was put together in 2 weeks in 2020. We had to come out because, of course, the pandemic. We decided to bring that back to the community. Black Power and the Vita team organized in the churches, so community health workers just getting residents resources where they needed, for example, like if they needed to quarantine, if they needed like assistance with rent or groceries, we were able to help them out where we had the capacity, and prayer vigils that we were able to have place in each city in Monterey County in 2020 just to acknowledge all the loss and the trauma that was going on in such a hectic time. In 2021, we committed to putting on a minimum of one event per month. Throughout the year of 2021, we organized a total of 14 events, so that was a good feat for us. We were just really hitting the ground, getting running. We had the MCBC talent show, or Monterey County Black Caucus talent show. I Am History, a conversation between 5 generations. Melanated millennials on a mission for Women's History Month that we had. Breaking the Cycle, Black Monterey County Talks. Our second annual Juneteenth event that we had, that was a big turnout, and just focusing on celebrating community, the freedom of Black people, and we also had our back to school drive. We had a voter registration drive-through and Wellness in the Park and Hill 831 wildfire victim supply drive. I didn't need to name all of them, but I felt like it was really important that you guys saw all the work that we did. 2022 summary, we had a community engagement and cultural enrichment activities. So we had giveaways, Seaside High, Black Joy Experience, just bringing our presence to the community and to the area, advocacy and organizer training and conferences for the police, policy and youth development, Circle Keeper trainings and Bayview Academy. That's when we went into cultivating leadership, introducing some of the youth there into what it means, what civic engagement even is, and how they can make a difference just by talking to their community members. And here are also some of the other events we had in 2022, including our Calibri, our youth summit that we had last December, which was very successful, and it showed us to the community, Seaside Rising specifically, and how much the youth had to say. And yeah, this is some of the things we did in 2022. I'll pass it on to you.
So for this year, our goals we were focused on moving our residents up the leadership ladder, and within BHC we have this thing where we identify the levels of engagement from our community. And so, some people just show up to support, but some people are actually in the work and wanting to be a part of the work. asking what they can do to support, what they can do to be a part of. And so we have these levels, and so that was one of our goals, is to move residents up from that 1 level to maybe 3 level. Mapping and addressing community priorities was also still an ongoing process, and engaging residents in economic development roundtables. And so one of our big ones was Black August that we just hosted this past August, and it was such a huge success because we got to see a lot of people who were pioneers of Seaside, who are luckily still with us till this day. They were telling our stories and like just reminiscing on the history of Seaside. And as you know, I'm not going to age myself, but it was nice to hear from, you know, the more seasoned folks about the history that I wasn't a part of just yet. So 1 to 3 highlights that we want to share. Juneteenth is always such a huge celebration for us. It's just that day that we can let our hair down and just be able to enjoy one another and celebrate. And people come from all over, from Florida, from Texas, and Southern California, and I could keep going, but it's just that one day that we're all able to come together and just say, like, we're here, and we're not going anywhere. And again, Black August and our surf listening session, which was a really huge thing, we hosted 2, 1 in Salinas and 1 in Seaside at Victory Temple. Unfortunately, we had to put a cap on the people that we invited, the amount of people we invited, but we packed out both times. And we were able to give the community an opportunity to share what challenges are in our community, whether it's not having affordable housing or not making enough money to even live here, and how a lot of our students, once they graduate, they have to move and they can't come back because they can't afford to. And so those types of conversations is necessary in our community, because when people who are not of our community are running it, we don't really get a say-so. And so that was a highlight. And then just to scan through, I'm not going to go through these, but if you could just take a look, these are a lot of the events that was mentioned from Skylar, I'm sorry, that we've done. And you see the voter registration drive-through? Okay. And then these were our most recent. I'll pass it back to Ross.
So we thought it would be a good idea to mention some of the challenges or struggles that we have. And something that really stands out is solidarity. And what we have identified here on the peninsula is that we have a lot of folks that are inspired and encouraged to do great work. But we also realize that we work in silos. And so part of what we really want to see happen is that solidarity becomes bigger than our silos in the work that we're doing. Like on the previous pages, as you can see, these are flyers of events that we did. And that directly connects us with the Democratic women of Monterey County, right? Because voting is like huge with what the Democratic DWMC women do, but it's also part of what we promote in Black community, but also with political education. And so that's one of the big things that we are also working on. And then exclusion and just being relegated to a secondary status and overlooked when it comes to resource allocations and access. So in Black community, we find that, you know, we are often the afterthought, you know, when things are happening and things are moving and, you know, resources are available. After, you know, everything is divvied and we look around the room, we say, oh, where's the Black community? Let's go get them. And so, you know, how do we make a more inclusive economy, more inclusive justice system to where, you know, we're at the table right at the beginning of the conversations and we're moving, you know, the work along together. And so how do we build our community power, and what does healing look like to us? So our objective is really to develop community power by actively listening to community voices and identifying their priorities. And with that listening, you know, we want to bring opportunities to have that visibility, because a big thing that we have seen over, you know, decades here on our peninsula is not just, you know, redlining or black pushout, but also black erasure, you know. And so we want to make sure that our stories are told so that our children and the generations coming do know that they're a part of this county, and that belonging can take place. And so through our relationships and connections with community, MCBC is the first responders to assist and relieve residents by bridging gaps to access resources, knowledge, and solutions. And so, what are ways that others can take action or work in solidarity with our team? We just put two things, and there are several, but we highlighted two things here. One is, don't hesitate to call out anti-Blackness. So while we often hear the words racism and white privilege in today's discourse around racial justice, anti-Blackness seems to get lost in the conversation. So let's be intentional. This discussion will help us identify anti-Blackness in our everyday lives and discuss ways to confront it. That is so important because our county is so rich in diversity. And we want to make sure that we're not losing, you know, that richness. And we want to make sure that, you know, we have the cultural richness that we were built on here to be able to remain here. And so how do we do that? You know, we do it by identifying and just really making sure that we are part of the solution and not part of the problem. And so with that, we want to be intentional in inclusivity. And that means being respectful and kind towards one another and ensuring that people from all groups and backgrounds have their voices heard. And so here's some ways to be intentional in inclusivity. Highlight Black contributions, challenge stereotypes, support and celebrate Black culture. Now we'll leave space for questions.
Okay, questions?
To any of us.
Anybody?
I have a question, Laura. The model you set up seems so powerful. You know, the learning aspects of it, the leadership development aspects of it, the engaging youth aspects of it. How did that come to be?
I think Rosalind is a great identifier of people's strengths and being able to place people where she feels that they can excel. And so for me, like, I feel like my motto has always been be the person I needed when I was growing up. So I relate to a lot of the youth in that way. And then Skylar is a youth, so she's able to identify because she's more connected in that age range. But there's people that's working within MCBC who have passion for policy change and, you know, financial, economic development and things like that. And so I think with her being our leader, being able to place people where, again, she feels that they can excel and get the most out of the work.
And I'll just add really quickly that experience is our best teacher sometimes, right? And so one thing I didn't mention that the caucus, so I've been around for quite a while. Like, I was born in the old hospital in the former Fort Ord. And so I've been able to see, you know, the shifts and transitions in the community. And so something that, that really aligned with BHC's mission and vision was like developing leadership is so important, especially like in Black community, because we do it until we can't do it anymore. And so what I saw in having the Black Caucus was a model that would, you know, resemble the NAACP with the millennial and Gen Z folks on the ground that is really like movement building and really doing the work. And so like really identifying that really like brings us closer to, I don't want to see my grandkids out protesting, you know, another 20 years from now. And I can remember my mom being in, you know, sit-ins and all of the civil rights, you know, work happening. And so that was, you know, something that we saw that was really key.
Marty has a question?
How do you really stress voter registration? Because your vote is your voice, and you can complain, but you have to vote, and that is what will get more action. I go to everything on the peninsula, and I never see one or two faces of my people. And you have to get out there. You just can't stay in your little groups.
Hey, Rosalind, we want to hear what you have to say, but to your point, we have voter registrations at every level.
If you've moved, you need to re-register. If you know anybody that's not registered, ask them to please register. We need every vote.
Take it away, Russ.
Wow. I'm looking at Tanisha, and she's already warned me not to call her up or call her out. But I went back to this slide because Tanisha has been our champion on our voters registration and getting people out because we realized in 2020 when we actually supported her political campaign that not a lot of Black community was registered or interested in voting. There's been, you know, brainwashing, a mindset of, does my vote really count? It doesn't really count. Elections are already rigged. So we had to do a lot of political education. But we even, you know, got kind of crafty because we made events fun, you know, and I don't know the number, but I know there was a high percentage of first-time voters from Black community in 2020. And again, I'm thinking back to Tanisha because a lot of folks were like, I'm just registering and voting to vote for her. And so we did Souls to the Polls, and you know, there was a lot of folks that engaged with that. Like it wasn't just us, it was all of us. And you know, so we walked to the polls to make sure people got out to vote. But I think to answer your question, political education is like really, really huge. And another reason that we knew that the Black Caucus was very important, because in our work with BHC, we're limited on our lobbying, you know, nonprofit work, right? And so we had to find another avenue where we could really, you know, reach the people and again, really like give them all the awareness and the trainings and access that's needed. Yeah.
Unfortunately, we are out of time because we have to, well, Tanisha, are you gonna, oh yeah, well, now you've been called out and your mama says like, you can say, and she just kind of gave me permission
To like have you come up and say a little bit more. And then unfortunately, though, we do have to be out of here by 1:30, so we can't do any more questions, but I think Tanisha had something to add here.
But George, we could take your question out in the parking lot.
Well, so if you have other questions, you can still stay here, and also there is the community human services table there that has information. But Tanisha, do you want to add something?
She did it perfectly. I didn't have much to add. I was just trying to tell her to say that the importance to me was just bridging that gap. Just bridging the gap. Because like she said, there was no interest in registering or voting in our community. And so like for them to be able to see someone who looks like them and who is from the community, you know, running for something, they were more interested. They were like, well, tell us more. And it wasn't about winning for me, it was for that. It was to get the vote out, get that vote out, come out, it's a big election, and we won. I mean, it was the bigger picture. I'm talking the United States presidential race. We won.
Thank you again to everyone who's here. Thank you to the Monterey County Black Caucus. Thank you for Community Human Services. And we wish you all a lovely rest of the week. And be on the lookout for our e-blast, which will tell you when our congressional update will be. And again, it'll likely be on Zoom. So we look forward to seeing you all. Thank you.